really nice of you. I'd also like to extend some really warm gratitude to the UMOCA, to Laura and Jared and Zach for all of the work that he's put into marketing and supporting me in this space. The UMOCA offers a really unique opportunity for artists in Utah to participate in this residency, to have access to studio space, and to have access to opportunities like this. So if you're feeling generous, you can help support our programming on your way out the door. But yeah, so welcome to my work. A couple things that I want to run through. I will give you just a brief background on myself, as well as like my proposal and my residency track. I'll talk a little bit about the content and some thoughts on like my individual pieces and kind of the layout that I've selected, and then open for some questions if you've got them. But essentially, I am a printmaker, as Zach introduced. My background is largely in screen printing, and I do a lot of copper plate etching. So as far as the prints here, I've got a couple of etchings up and my collagraphs. I have also spent a lot of time working in galleries. I started with some gallery management between my undergrad and my graduate degree, and then just like full sent into arts education, teaching printmaking and drawing after grad school. So staying in Utah after I completed my MFA, I had already kind of established a good relationship with Laura and with UMOCA and was able to apply for this residency and was very fortunate to be awarded it. So that includes like a full year spent in my studio doing different research, engaging in a proposed body of work. So when I initially proposed, and what I applied with was this idea of navigating the feminization and gendering of AI. It's like such a hot button topic right now. I was really interested in that, and I felt like none of us were asking the right questions about like the ethics of AI, or this idea of like servitude or like administrative secretarial things. But as I got into that work, I realized that I just wanted to watch science fiction, and then but the thing that really like stood out for me as I was doing this like initial research first was that I had all of these Playboy magazines from previous bodies of work that I was like unwilling to part with just yet. Anytime I found myself drawing or like settling into my stuff, I was going back to these magazines and looking at these bodies. But then the second thing is that as I was engaging with different science fiction that represented this feminized AI, I realized a lot of the time that I identified more with the AI character than I identified with any of the people in in those movies. And on one hand, like one could argue that that's probably the point, is like that humanization. But I found myself just kind of stuck on this idea of like, I feel like I have this role that I have to fulfill, and I feel like my emotional needs are always this like secondary thing, and I feel like I have this body that I don't really want. I didn't really ask for it, but now I've got it, and I have to do things with it to keep it alive and happy. I don't know, feed it, water it, like a houseplant, feed a houseplant. But that started getting me thinking more about like the software side of it. So if I am an AI, then what is my data set? And I was like, well, obviously it's all this frickin' porn that I have in my studio. Like, sorry. So I really kind of just dug into it with this idea that like this kind of content, this imagery, this single lens of a body is the thing that has been fed to me. That is my data set. That's the thing that I am expected to have. That's the thing that I expect myself to participate in. Yeah. So the more that I kind of talk about this body of work with people, the more often I hear some really interesting stories about people's like first glimpse at sexually explicit content, especially for those of us who are in our 30s or older. Playboy was kind of like the gateway drug into pornography, right? Like it was accessible, it was like top secret dirty, somebody's stepdad left and they had a whole bin of desirable, and he tied an entire lifestyle to it. So Playboy magazine was as much about selling us a lifestyle and an identity as it was about being sexually gratifying. So if you have the right cars, and if you have the right watches, and if you have the right men's Rogaine and the right cologne, like you can get it. You can get after this gorgeous woman. And if you want those things, if you want a man with those things, you have to look like these women. And that is insidious. So I was asked in an interview with Zach earlier about why didn't I choose a more contemporary source of pornography. And that's the primary reason, is that with contemporary pornography, with the internet, there is an intentionality in how we access that content. We make a decision, I have a task at hand, literally. I'm gonna find something I want and we're gonna move on, right? But Playboy was this thing that just lived in our houses, and it lived in Dad's CD, not my dad respects women, but it lived in Dad's CD porn garage, you know? With the Sports Illustrated models and the centerfolds. So here we are, and you're looking at the outcome of this obsession that I have. So in talking about like the direct outcomes of this work, or like where this research took me, I have kind of created a system so that you're coming in and engaging with the direct content. So all of these data sheets are a product of the backward centerfold. So starting in 1979, Hugh Hefner started to include these. I think it was a direct response to second wave feminism challenging him on the objectification of the models in his magazine, and somehow he chose to make it worse. So he created this data sheet, which essentially offers the model's name, their birthday, their astrological sign, of course, their bust measurement, their waist measurement, their hip measurement, and some of their most interesting interests, which include being turned on and men with money. But the worst part of this for me was seeing their childhood photographs that he opted to include. Seeing these 2-year-old girls, seeing one of the magazine, or one of these data sheets has a woman at 15 years old in a near-naked bathing suit, which they published inside a pornographic magazine. And so this conflation of children and infantilization of women just is so insidious in how it builds up, and it draws this connection between these tiny baby bodies that need to be protected and this extremely explicit material. If you flip, and I'd welcome you to touch these gently, we can flip them. Half of them are just like children on one side, and then the literally naked vulva on the other side because of where it lines up to the centerfold. So you're looking at baby pictures juxtaposed against grown naked women's bodies, and these are being sold as sexually explicit materials. It's problematic, and that lives in our zeitgeist, that lives in our world. It's the content that has built up in how we think this. So really thinking about that kind of objectification, I have this other etching called Objecthood, where I've tried to focus on the centerfold more as an artifact than as an image of this woman. So I'm using heavy saturation. I'm also using a technique called soft ground, which is a process that enables you to create texture from lace or feathers, things like that, and etch it directly into the plate. So different textures that you see in here come from a lot of household items. I think it's important to tie back that kind of domesticity into these thoughts about sexuality and thoughts about the body. I have some of these resin pieces, which again are thinking about different ways to start to disrupt that visual that we're all accustomed to. And something interesting that happens with the silhouetting is that our minds can fill in the body with or without the visual of it. So within the silhouettes that I've created, both in these direct collage materials, in my collagraphs, in my drawings, I'm really thinking about how to create that outline, to create that body, that specificity, authenticity while still eliminating a lot of the visual gratification that comes with it. Miss May, as a centerpiece, using her data sheet, I decided to make her life size. So I scanned in her material, or the centerfold, and I kind of played with it. But she's 5'6", and she weighs 95 pounds. She has a 22-inch waist, which, for context, is about the size of one of my thighs. Just not as a comparison, no shame to her or to me, just to kind of give you that idea if you're not already deep in that body of yours. So yeah, she's here, and she's here with a collection. So this is about 40 years of Playboy magazines that I've spilt out, focusing again on the data sheet, focusing on some of the advertising. One of my favorite advertisements is on the top. It says, "Give the gift of literacy." right next to good old pinup. They want to make sure that you're reading the magazine. What did you buy it for, pervert? So, moving over here, we get more into these holographs, which tie back more to that earlier AI research. So I've incorporated some language, thinking about these processes, thinking about these averages, and that idea of the data collection and how our DNA works, how our bodies work. And then finally, like moving into the back, I have these drawings where I have created voids, again, to kind of work away from that visual gratification. So, it's getting really warm in here. There's a lot of bodies in a small space, and I'll kind of push through to some closing thoughts. But at the end of it, as Zach mentioned in my introduction, I'm really interested in media literacy. So even if you're in this space and you're feeling pretty put off by the content, by my choice to look at Playboy, I hope that what you take away from it is not just that these ideas are complicated and layered, and that bodies are bodies, but thinking more in terms of like, how does the content that we take in